Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This Day in History. It is May 24th, 2024. It's an overcast day. Again, kind of like yesterday, normally people don't wear sunglasses, but there is a light intensity, even though there's cloud cover. That's kind of bothering my eyes, so that's why I'm wearing my sunglasses. And it looks like it might spit a little bit of precipitation on us. I don't know. So we have This Day in History for May 24th. Some notable birthdays. Royalty, musician, athletes, and as far as the actual days, we have some interesting religious freedom. We have some sentencing of high-profile criminals. We have a correction from yesterday. I do believe that yesterday I had reported that the Brooklyn Bridge had opened, and that's not the case. That actually happened today, not yesterday. And but that's going to be the featured event here as soon as I get to it. So I just kind of gave you a prelude to that. So let's get into it, shall we? So right off the bat, the very first birthday we have to acknowledge is it's in 1819, and it's Queen Victoria. And Queen Victoria would basically live all throughout the 19th century, well, except for the first 19 years of it. She would live not well, but I mean, she would live into the 20th century. She passed away in 1901. So, it's pretty interesting is that, she is one of those figures that actually got to see the evolution of travel, the evolution of transportation, everything that was like from horse-drawn carriages to basically the very first cars, which were steam engines. She would have seen train travel. Still too early for her to have ever witnessed air travel, but she had seen the world change in a dramatic way from 1819 to 1901. So that was the very first birthday on this day. In 1819, the Queen Victoria was born. In 1908, they said American gangster. We're talking like mafioso type. Sam Giancana was born in 1908. He was of the Italian mafia. There is alleged rumor that he and President Kennedy had a little bit of beef because supposedly, Cousin John was banging Giancana's wife or girlfriend or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how much of it is true or how much of it is just, sensationalized, juicy details just to, keep the story going. I don't know. In 1941, on this day, American singer, songwriter, he was basically billed as kind of like the, I think it said he was the William Shakespeare of modern music. Bob Dylan was born on this day in 1941. In 1949, Jim Broadbent, he was a British actor. He was born on this day. And in 1966, a French football player, and I'm assuming when they say football, they're talking soccer, because soccer to the rest of the world, or soccer to us is football to the rest of the world. Cantona is his name, Eric Cantona. He was born on this day, 1966. So I was talking about some religious freedom, right? So, British Parliament in 1689, they passed the Toleration Act, and what the Toleration Act was, essentially, it was the nonconformists. They granted religious freedom to nonconformists to go worship as they liked, worship where they liked. Basically they could have their own nonconformist church. They could have, they could do all that. Basically, it was religious freedom. And what's interesting about that is, like, that's why, so it is said, historically speaking, it is said that's why the Americas were colonized, was for religious freedom. People didn't like being under the thumb of the Catholic Church, and they wanted to be a Protestant, and they weren't getting the religious freedom that they thought they deserved. So one of the reasons why so many people had flocked to the Americas and decided to become colonists over here was so that they could enjoy religious freedom away from the Church of England, which was essentially Catholic, or at least Anglican anyway. I don't know. I'm a little fuzzy on that, but basically the American colonies, why a lot of folks decided to come to the colonies was, they said it was for religious freedom, that they could practice religion as they saw fit. They could be Protestant as they saw fit, or they could be Catholic as they saw fit, Quakers, what have you. It would eventually be a concept that would be deep-rooted into the American Revolution, where our First Amendment was paramount that man should be able to be free to worship how he likes, that he should be able to speak his mind without fear of repercussions from the government, and that he should be free to address any issues that he has, and to peacefully organize, and to have a free press. These were paramount in the founding of our nation, and we get a lot of that from essentially from our religious freedom. And England took steps to go that direction in 1689 by passing the Tolerance Act. So it was a step in the right direction. However, people were still flocking to the New World to escape religious oppression. 1882. This is in South America. There is a Pichincha. I'm butchering it. Pichincha, right? This battle took place, and it was in South America at a time where the South, what is now known as the South American countries, they're fighting for their independence away from Spain. Everyone is breaking away from Spain. Everyone is wanting their freedom from Spain, and this battle was fought, and the rebels won. They won this battle on this day in 1822, and so I'm guessing it was probably like a domino effect, right? So now once you start getting these succession of successful battles fighting for independence, that it's a cascading effect, because like Spain is just losing its foothold on the New World. Because by the end of that century, they're embroiled in a war with the United States, and they lose. Part and parcel, they basically lose their foothold in the Americas, because at the conclusion of the Mexican-American War, that war went from 1898 to 1902. Spain loses Cuba, Spain loses Puerto Rico, and on the Pacific side, they lose Guam, and they lose the Philippines. So this was kind of a cascading effect of where, over time they just lose their foothold, and they lose their power and prestige as an empire. And we find that all the big nations that had occupied territories across the globe, that trend is starting, and it's I don't know that it started with the American Revolution, but I think the American Revolution certainly had incentivized a lot of other people to revolt as they saw fit. And it certainly was the beginning for the British to lose a lot of their territories. It was said once that the sun never set on the British Empire because the British Empire's holdings were so vast and their territories were so grand that that the sun never set on the British Empire. Moving right along, 1830, right? So 1830, the Baltimore, Ohio line railroad is opened up, and on the maiden voyage, the Peter Cooper's locomotive named the Tom Thumb ran the maiden voyage of this newly minted railroad line, Baltimore, Ohio railroad line. So that happened on this day in 1830. 1856, so the other day we talked about John Brown, and we talked about the insurrection that he led. And I believe the other day it was his, either it was his conviction or it was his execution. I can't remember right off the top of my head what exactly it was, but on this day in 1856, this is the actual incident that I was referring to. It was in Kansas. It was it was in Kansas, right? Where he led a nighttime raid, and it was a pro-slavery location, and so he led this revolt, and 5 men were killed, and essentially that's why he was put to death, is because 5 men were killed. It says in the article that I read, it said 5 men were murdered. So there's no coming back from that. So the raid itself actually took place on this day in 1856. Let's see, 1938, Carl McGee would get a patent for the coin-operated parking meter. And so, if you've ever wondered where the parking meters came from your downtown locations where you're going to plug in your quarters to pay for your parking, your quarters, dimes, nickels, what have you, right? You can thank Carl McGee for that one, because he's the guy who actually invented the thing, got it patented, and the rest is history. 1951, the U.S. is, its nuclear program is progressing. It is on this day that a 4th test was conducted, and basically what they were testing the next level of nuclear technology, the next level of nuclear fission, and this 4th test was concluded on this day in 1951, and it helped them get one step closer to that goal, which I assume that was, I don't know if the hydrogen bomb had been created by that point yet, but it was probably, if not, then it was definitely one step closer to achieving that goal. But the overall, what it was that, after they had successfully created the atom bomb in 45, they tested it, then they used it, From that point, it was on to the next bigger bomb, because the reality was that it wasn't going to be long before our adversaries would get the technology. We didn't have it solely for ourselves. Britain eventually got nuke technology. France got nuke technology. The Russians got nuke technology. And the reality is that the Germans were working on an atom bomb just as we were, but they went the wrong direction. And so that basically sidelined them for about 6 months. So if you ever, take into comparison here, or take into consideration rather, that, how close was the race to the atom bomb between the Americans and the Germans? Well, how close it was about 6 months, right? Had Germany not gone the direction that they gone, they were going the direction of utilizing heavy water versus finding a way of splitting the atom. Had they gone the other route, they most likely would have got a working atom bomb long before we did. And their intent was to use it. I think there's rumor mill that Hitler had plans for Manhattan Island here in the United States, New York, that he basically wanted to nuke Manhattan to send a clear, strong message to the United States saying, back off. I would rather us be friends than enemies. I think that was his overall goal, and thankfully it didn't happen that way. In 1993, so I remember this because that was the year I graduated high school. But the World Trade Center in 1993, y'all know about 9/11, but do you know about what happened in 1993? See, in 1993, that same building was bombed, right? It was, what they did, the terrorists did, is they got a moving truck, just a plain, ordinary moving truck, and like what Timothy McVeigh did in 1996, packed up a moving truck full of fertilizer and then detonated it. It exploded. I'm not sure what their implied goal was. I think they thought they were going to take the whole building down with one truck bomb, which I think eventually made them decide to use the airplanes, 8 years later. So they utilize this truck bomb. It explodes. It kills 6 people and wounds 1,000. At any rate, it was on this day, and that's how we found out about Bin Laden being the mastermind, because they basically had thrown him under the bus and said he was the mastermind. It wasn't our idea. We just followed orders. But those men, and I believe there were 4 of them. Yeah. There were 4 of them that were convicted for that crime, and each one of them got 240 years as a prison sentence. So they're still sitting in prison somewhere, and likely when Guantanamo Bay was still up and running, I think it probably still is. It's just hush hush. But I can imagine that they were sent there. So in 2000, Israel ends an 18-year occupation of southern Lebanon. They withdraw all their troops from their safety zone, and they essentially give, that part of Lebanon back to the Lebanese. 18 years. So that was probably in response to the Beirut is in Lebanon. So in 1981, U.S. Marine barracks were bombed. A lot of Marines were killed. And I think Israel just went in there and took care of the problems. That those are, these are our allies, and you don't get to mess with our allies, so we're going to go occupy you. I'm guessing that's probably what happened, but the timing sounds about right. A good dear friend of mine, Andre, I call him Papa. He was a Marine, and he was actually stateside. That was his barracks. Those were his buddies that were being pulled out of the wreckage. He was at home on leave at the time, was watching the news, and he was watching his friends being pulled out of the wreckage, and he recognized a couple of them. And he kind of had a little bit of survivor's guilt over the fact that, like, he was home and he should have been there with his friends instead of being home. But, it's just kind of luck of the draw. So today's feature event is on this day in 1883. I talked about this yesterday, I believe. Or maybe I didn't, I can't remember. If I had reported it yesterday that the Brooklyn Bridge was opened on this day in 1883, it was an error, and here is the correction. It was actually on this day, May 24th, 1883, that the Brooklyn Bridge would open. So that is your day in history. That concludes your day in history for May 24th. And we will do it again tomorrow for May 25th. And what's going to be special about May 25th? Well, there's a certain movie that was released on May 25th, and it was a game changer globally. I'll tease you with that. And we will come back again tomorrow, and we will discuss this day in history. So stay tuned, take care, be well, be blessed, have a blessed day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.